Hello and welcome. In this video, we're going to learn how to compare intensity of use of different species when one species or multiple species are present or not present at different sites. So I've downloaded the data off the eMammal website, and you might get it from your volunteer coordinator. And it'll look something like this. Each row represents one sequence in a given deployment. The first column is the deployment name. We've got the dates that the deployment came in and went out, the latitude and longitude, and then we've got the begin and end date time of that particular sequence. Then we've got the species, both common name and scientific name, detected in that sequence, and the group size. We also have a column that represents, in this particular data set, habitat type. And then we've got a number of other columns with other information that isn't really relevant for this particular analysis, but will come in the data set. So for this analysis, we're interested in the intensity of use, which is the amount of times that we detect a species in a given place, corrected for the amount of time that a camera ran in that place. And we want to compare it between areas that have coyotes and those that don't have coyotes, or at least those that had coyotes detected. So to do that, we're going to use pivot tables. First, we have to select the data set, the sheet. So go to the upper left corner and click that corner there. You're going to select that, selects the whole sheet. Then we'll go to Data and Pivot Table to create a pivot table. If you're using a PC, the pivot table is under the Insert menu. So we'll click that. And then we've already selected all of our data, so we can click OK. It'll take it a second, and then it'll come up with, there it is, a blank pivot table and then the pivot table builder. So we're going to have to make a couple of different pivot tables to answer our question. The first one is we want to know at each camera site, at each deployment, what is the total number of times that each species was detected. So on our first column, we're going to put the deployment name, which is the title. There they are. There are quite a few. And then across the top, we want the common names of the species, CN. There we go. And then we want the count, and we actually want the sum of the count, which will reflect, which will include or control for group size. So we'll click the I here to go from the count of the count to the sum of the count, and click OK. And you'll see the numbers change a little bit there. All right, so this is our first pivot table. We'll go ahead and copy it. Just click and drag across, and then use either Command-C if you're on a Mac or Control-C to copy. Open a new sheet, and then in the first cell, right-click, go to Paste Special, and then Values. And this just gets all those numbers out of the pivot table and into their just raw number form that we can work with very easily. I like to select the first 3 rows and delete them. I also like to delete the blank and grand total columns and the blank and grand total rows, which are at the bottom. Too far. There we go. Okay, so we'll delete that as well. Now here's a trick for getting really quickly up to the top or bottom of a sheet. You can click on one cell that has values in it, and then go to the top edge till you see the hand, double click, and it takes you very quickly up to the top. Now I'm going to select this whole sheet, double click between 2 columns to extend everything out so I can read the full titles of everything. Okay, the next thing that I like to do is change all of the blanks to zeros. Okay, so to do that, I'm going to select everything right over to row labels. Holding the Shift key, I'm going to wait till I get to the bottom of the bottom cell. I see the hand, double click, takes me all the way down to the bottom. And then holding down Shift still, you can move over 1 because we don't want to replace anything in the row labels. So I've just selected all the values there, all the space where the values go. And now I can go to Edit, Replace, and I can replace all of the blanks with zeros and replace all. Okay, there we go. All right, so this is my first pivot table. Now what I need to do to answer this question is to correct all of these raw counts for the amount of time that the camera actually ran at each of these sites. So this is a measure of effort. So I'll make that pivot table next. First, I'm going to name this sheet counts so I don't get confused. I'll go back to my pivot table. So to get the time that each camera ran, I'm going to put the, clear these things out. So I'll keep the titles there. To get the time each camera ran, I can use the begin date time. And I want the minimum, so I'm going to click the I, go to minimum, and OK. So this is the first day that the camera took a picture. And then I can take the end date time and take the maximum. This is the last day. Okay. So these date times look kind of funky, but we're going to fix those in a second. First, we'll copy this entire pivot table, take it to a new sheet, right-click, paste special, values. Again, delete the top 3 rows, go down to the bottom, delete the last 2. And we'll go back up to the top. I'm going to expand it. There we go. Now I can highlight columns B and C, right-click, go to Format Cells, Number, I'm sorry, not number, Date, because we want to change this into a date-time format. So scroll down until you see date time and click OK. And there we have our date time. So they were there, they were just in a different format. And now we want to know the duration. So we're going to make a new column here. And we're going to enter the formula equals the end date time minus the begin date time. Okay, so this first camera ran for 14.3989468 days. And then to copy this formula down to the whole rest of the sheet, we can go to the bottom right corner and double click when we see the black cross. And it will copy that entire formula down. And then because I don't like to work in formulas, we're going to click D, copy, click the first cell, right click, paste special, values. And again, now we're just dealing with the values. So now we can copy this column again and bring it over to our counts. We're going to scroll up to the top. And we're going to insert it between A and B by right-clicking on B and choosing Insert Copied Cells. So there we go. Let's scroll down to the bottom just to make sure it's the right length. Double check it is. That's good. Okay, so now we have this giant column here, this giant table with our raw counts and our duration. The next thing we want to do is sort this table by coyote, because what we're interested in is comparing sites that have coyotes and those that don't have coyotes. So we're going to select the whole sheet. We're going to go to this sort icon, to the arrow just beside it, custom sort. My list has headers. This means that yes, I do have column names. And then we're going to choose the coyote column and OK. So now we've sorted from smallest to largest, so we can scroll down. So these are all sites without coyotes in them. Coyote is column E. So we're going to scroll down until we see a 1. There we go. Whoops, too far. Let's go back up. Then we're going to insert, I'm right-clicking, I'm going to insert a couple columns here. Oh, sorry, a couple rows here. I'm going to go back up to the top, copy the labels at the top, that first row, just so I don't get confused. Bring it back down to the bottom, paste it. Okay, so we've got 2 tables, one with coyotes and one without coyotes for the raw counts. And we've also added our duration. And we're going to come down to the bottom of each table. And we're going to get a sum of the duration and of the counts. So to do that, we'll use the Autosum Function, which is right up here. Just click that, and it'll go all the way to the top of that column. Then we can copy that, holding down Shift. We can go across the bottom and paste. Right? And I'm actually going to call this, instead of sum, I'm going to call it with without coyotes. All right, I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to paste it special into this new sheet. Okay. Let me go back to my counts sheet. We're going to do the same thing for the table with coyotes. We'll go to the bottom. We'll call this with coyotes. We're going to auto sum. Copy. And paste. And copy that whole thing. And paste special values. Okay. Then we're going to need some column names, so we'll go up to the top here. We're going to copy these column names, this column heading row, and paste it here. I'm going to expand that. All right, so we've got this little mini table where we've got those deployments without coyotes, those with coyotes, the total number of camera nights we have in each of those categories, and the total count we have in each of those categories for each of these species. Now we're going to copy this entire table and paste it twice, one below the other. In the third table, we're going to take the duration here and we're going to paste it across. So we've got one entire table that is duration only. And then in this top table, we're going to use a formula to correct the counts for the effort. So we're going to divide the counts by the effort. So equals the corresponding cell in the next table down divided by the corresponding cell in the next table down after that, and enter. Then we can copy that and paste it across this entire top table. And now what we have is these corrected rates, which represent the intensity of use of each habitat by each of these species. We can copy this entire table, paste it special over itself, values, and delete the bottom two tables. And now we can start to graph multiple species to see how they might change with and without coyotes. So let's take a look at a couple. Maybe we'll look at squirrel, gray fox, red fox, and raccoon. So we'll highlight those, go to chart, column, and the first option, make it a little bit bigger. And then we need to kind of rearrange this a little bit, so we're going to right-click, select data. The first thing we want to do is switch the rows and columns, like so. And then we're going to choose the category X labels by clicking here and choosing with and without coyotes. Click the box again, and then OK. So here we've got our three species, gray squirrel, gray fox, and raccoon. And we've got without coyotes and with coyotes. And we can see kind of the opposite pattern between gray squirrels and raccoons, that there are more raccoons where there are coyotes, and more eastern gray squirrel where there are not coyotes, which is not terribly surprising. And slightly more gray fox where there are coyotes, but not a huge difference there. So you can do this with a number of different species, any multiple species, and you can look at it with and without coyotes or with and without other species, humans, for example. Lots of possibilities here.